while many Israelis and Palestinians have long ago given up on the idea of a two-state solution, Europe's political elite, are still holding out hope. And with the American peace plan supposedly set to be released soon, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Mike Wagenheim reports that Europe's old guard says Donald Trump is moving in the wrong direction.
America says it's moving on from the failures of the past. Europe wants to keep trying. A Sunday report in the Washington Post claims America's soon-to-be-revealed Middle East peace plan likely won't include a Palestinian state. A host of former European prime ministers, foreign ministers, and NATO secretary generals responding, sending a letter this week to the EU and European governments. Its message? Don't give up on the classic two-state solution model for Israel and the Palestinians, and reject any American peace plan that doesn't fit the standard parameters. The creation of a Palestinian state based on the 1948 armistice lines, Jerusalem as the capital for two states, security arrangements that address legitimate concerns and respect sovereignty, and an agreed fair solution to the question of Palestinian refugees. The letter also took to task the American administration for departing from long-standing U.S. policy and established international legal norms, recognizing only one side's claims to Jerusalem, demonstrating an indifference to Israeli settlement expansion, and suspending funding for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees and other programs benefiting Palestinians. And the EU seems to be on board, with the spokesperson telling I-24 News that the EU has always believed that the only way to end the conflict is through a two-state solution negotiated between the parties. But the point that the Americans, and Israelis for that matter, have been making is that the old paradigms of making peace in this region aren't relevant anymore.
It's not about the 67 borders. It's not even about Jerusalem. It's about the state of Israel. If Israel were the size of Tel Aviv, it would not be acceptable to Palestinian leadership. Conversely, Israelis are unwilling to pull back to undefensible borders, unwilling to divide their ancient ancestral capital of Jerusalem.
That means that while the American plan is almost certain to fail, the European plan has already failed too many times for Israel to take another look. Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
Ghaith Al-Omari is a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and former Palestinian negotiator, and he joins me now from Washington, D.C. And with me in studio, our very own diplomatic correspondent, Ellie Hochenberg, and senior international affairs correspondent, Owen Alterman. Owen, we'll get you to kick us off because, of course, this is a report that we're hearing out of the Washington Post, and even up until now, details have been scarce. But more broadly, in terms of what we know so far, what are these economic incentives or opportunities, as it's been put, supposed to look like?
Well, Tracy, from all we understand, they're at the core of the plan. And as you said, there haven't been a lot of specifics, but at least in past reports, less so in this Washington Post article, but in past reports, there's been a big focus on Gaza. And of course, we know the Israeli government has off and on talked about economic proposals for Gaza. Again, that offshore port that's been talked about for so long, and potentially about finding ways to lift some of the blockade on Gaza. But again, Gaza's been a focus, although we should say, again, less so in this Washington Post report. We also know that the Gulf states have been approached to pony up and to pay up and to supply the money for these economic incentives. Washington Post does point out that it's unclear whether the United States government will join in, whether Congress would even be willing and be interested to take part. But the focus does seem to be on the Gulf. And as Ghaith Al-Omari, our guest, said, the Gulfies weren't so anxious to pick up the tab, at least not at this point, saying, according to him, they have to wait and see what's in the plan. They're not willing to give Donald Trump a blank check. So,
Ghaith, to that point, the Palestinian Authority has long said that this plan is dead on arrival. But what if, and according to you, what we've read in the Washington Post is a big if, what if these Arab countries do back the deal? Would the PA be pressured to take it?
I mean, it is a very big if, and the if will depend on whether or not there are two elements in the plan, a Palestinian state and access to East Jerusalem. If, however, these things are there and the Arabs are saying yes, or even yes, but, or even if they're saying, you know, there's something worth considering there, the PA will be in a very difficult position. Most likely the Arabs will not disagree with the PA publicly, but they will apply a lot of private pressure on the PA. The problem is, again, we don't know what's in the plan, and frankly, so far the administration has failed to diplomatically engage the Arabs to look at how they're going to react the day after the announcement. So it is a big if, but if these kinds of conditions are met, then we might see some kind of pressure on the PA.
And we know, Ellie, that Benjamin Netanyahu was, of course, well, at least we know that US President Donald Trump was waiting to release the peace plan after the Israeli elections. We're now in coalition talks, Benjamin Netanyahu looking to form his fifth government. How top of mind is this when the Prime Minister is looking to form his coalition?
Well, Tracy, tomorrow's problems may remain tomorrow's problems as far as Netanyahu cares. If the plan is that Israeli-friendly, let's put it like that, it's quite a decent scenario from a Jerusalem standpoint, because if the Trump administration is releasing a new plan and it becomes the future reference point for all potential peace negotiations, even if this deal of the century will not make it through, is a good thing, because it is something Jerusalem might find easier to communicate with. So it's not necessarily a bad thing from, again, Netanyahu's standpoint to see such a, again, Israeli-friendly plan being formulated or presented for future's sake, not just next month or 2 months from now, but for future's sake.
It looks as though it's pretty Israeli-friendly in terms of what's already been given, Owen, to Israel leading up to the delivery of this plan. And looking at perhaps what has been left off it or not addressed, what's the thinking, I suppose, behind not addressing East Jerusalem or the West Bank as a future Palestinian state?
Well, Tracy, again, it goes to a question that you asked in our show last night. What is the point of the plan if everyone's just going to be saying no? Why is the administration still intent on delivering something that, as we said last night, isn't only dead on arrival, but seems to be dead in transit?